Her name was Anna, and she had always been a fighter. Growing up in a small Romanian village, she learned early on that life wasn't kind to those who didn't stand up for themselves. Her parents were hard-working but stern, and they instilled in her a sense of resilience that had carried her through some of the toughest moments of her life. When she moved to Chicago to pursue her dreams, she thought she was leaving behind the judgmental whispers and sideways glances that had followed her for years. But the city, with its towering skyscrapers and endless noise, had a way of making her feel even smaller than she had back home. Anna had always been self-conscious about her weight. In Romania, it was common for people to comment on your appearance, whether it was your aunt pinching your cheek and saying you'd gained a few kilos, or your neighbor loudly remarking that you'd filled out since they last saw you. She had learned to brush it off, to laugh it away, but the comments had left scars that she carried with her, even as she built a new life thousands of miles away. Tonight, though, she wasn't thinking about any of that. She was just tired. The rain had started to fall, a light drizzle that quickly turned into a downpour, and she stood under the awning of a coffee shop, her phone in hand, waiting for her Uber to arrive. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that seemed to stretch on forever. She pulled her jacket tighter, around her shivering slightly as the wind cut through the fabric. When the car pulled up, she glanced at the app to confirm the details. The driver's name was Mihai, a Romanian name. Her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't every day she encountered someone from back home in this sprawling, fast-paced city. For a moment she felt a flicker of excitement. Maybe this would be a chance. To speak her native language, to feel a little less like a stranger in a strange land. Chicago was a city of contradictions. It was vibrant and alive, pulsing with energy, but it could also feel cold and impersonal. The skyscrapers loomed overhead, their glass facades reflecting the neon lights of the city below. The streets were crowded, even at this hour, with people rushing to and fro, their faces obscured by umbrellas and hoods. Anna loved the city, but there were moments when it felt overwhelming, like she was just another face in the crowd, invisible and insignificant. As she slid into the backseat of the car, she felt a sense of relief. The rain was coming down harder now, and the warmth of the car was a welcome reprieve. She greeted Mihai in Romanian, her voice tinged with hope. Maybe this would be a chance to connect, to feel a little less alone. But his response was curt, almost dismissive. "Bună," he muttered, before immediately turning his attention back to his phone. He was mid-conversation with someone, speaking rapid-fire Romanian. Anna decided not to interrupt, settling into her seat and letting the familiar sounds of her native language wash over her. Mihai was a middle-aged man with a gruff demeanor. His face was lined with wrinkles, and his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, as if he were holding on to it for dear life. He had been in the U.S. for years, but he still clung to his Romanian identity, using it as a shield to justify his disdain for American culture. He hated the fast-paced lifestyle, the superficiality, the way people seemed to care more about appearances than substance. But most of all, he hated the women. As the car pulled away from the curb, his tone shifted. The conversation turned sharp, his words dripping with disdain. "No, I still have a few hours left," he said to the person on the other end of the call. "Right now I have someone in the car. God, I hate this country. The women here are so fat and ugly. At least this one has a nice chest, but why can't she lose some weight?" Anna's breath caught in her throat. She froze, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. He continued ranting about American women, about how they were lazy, how they didn't take care of themselves, how they were nothing compared to the women back home. Each word felt like a slap. She had always been on the curvier side, and yes, back in Romania people weren't shy about pointing it out. But this was different. This was cruel, and he thought she couldn't understand him. The city lights blurred outside the window as she sat there, torn between anger and disbelief. Part of her wanted to confront him right then and there, to unleash the fury bubbling inside her. But another part, the part that had learned to pick her battles, told her to wait, to bide her time, to let him dig his own grave. The car rolled on, the minutes stretching into what felt like hours. His voice droned on, a constant stream of insults and complaints. She clenched her jaw, her nails digging into her palms. How could someone be so hateful, so oblivious, so arrogant? As they neared her destination, Anna took a deep breath. This was her moment. She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady, but laced with the distinct accent of the region she'd lived in. Pozzo Prestacolo, undrapta to rog, she said, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. The car jerked slightly as his head whipped around, his eyes wide with shock. His face turned a shade of red she didn't think was possible, like a tomato left out in the sun too long. He didn't say a word, just pulled over to the side of the road. She opened the door, stepped out, and leaned back in. Mulțumesc, she said, her tone sweet but sharp. Then, in Romanian, she added, "You're not attractive, and you're also fat, so maybe you shouldn't make comments like that." The look on his face was priceless. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. She slammed. The door shut and walked away, her head held high. As she reached her apartment building, Anna couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt a surge of pride, not just in standing up for herself, but in the quiet power of knowing a language he never expected her to understand. That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the moment in her mind. It wasn't just revenge. It was a reminder that no matter where she was in the world, she carried a piece of home with her, a language, a culture, and the strength to use both when it mattered most. And as for Mihai, well, she hoped he learned a valuable lesson that night. Never underestimate the woman in your back seat. She might just understand every word you say.